welcome back to my channel. Now today I'm going to be giving a review for the Amazing Spider-Man Death of the Stacys. Now this is a graphic novel which collects Amazing Spider-Man issues 88 through 92. Then it also collects the legendary issues of 121 to 122. And you know, of course, that is a storyline that dealt with the death of Gwen Stacy at the hands, of the Green Goblin. Now, I have never read that particular tale, and I have always wanted to read it. So I'm actually glad that I actually was able to get my hands on this particular book. Because I know the actual story itself was actually remade at one point. But this right here was the actual original tale from like the early 70s. First issue, which is issue number 88. And that took place in the, where it was released in September of 1970. It was actually written by Stan Lee. Like, he actually wrote the script for it. But the art was done by John Romita. The inking by Jim Mooney, and the lettering was done by Sam Rosen. I think that's how you pronounce their names. Now it actually deals with the idea that Dr. Octopus, he's like locked away in like a penitentiary, like in New York, but his actual mechanical arms, they were placed like in like this museum of natural science. But somehow Dr. Octopus was actually able to control his mind. He was actually able to link his mind to his mechanical arms, and he had the mechanical arms escaped from the museum, and they actually got to the penitentiary and freed him from the penitentiary. Then he went and attacked like an airplane. Yeah, they have him, he aboards like an airplane, and he captures a general suit. Dr. Octopus demands ransom for his return. I think he demands like $10 million in ransom, and of course Spider-Man finds out about this, once the plane lands, and then they have like a confrontation. Over the course of the next 3 issues, like from the Amazing Spider-Man 88 to issue 90, you have Spider-Man battling Dr. Octopus. Now this is a spoiler alert for people who have never read this particular issue, because I wasn't really too fond of Captain Stacy. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan too, by the way. He's actually my second favorite superhero after after Batman, But once we get to the issue of the Amazing Spider-Man issue 90, and this was in November of 1970. This is where we have like the actual death of Captain George Stacy, and he dies at the hands of like when Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus is fighting on the rooftop of this building. Dr. Octopus manages to knock over like a chimney with his arms, and the chimney falls to like pieces off the building, and as it's falling, this little kid, like a little boy, I think, who's standing in the way, and Captain George Stacy, he actually jumps in front of the kid and pushes him out of the way, and the rubbles and the bricks from the chimney breaking apart fall on him, and that's what kills him, and this is actually Spider-Man's girlfriend's father, so that's kind of a shock right there, that like his girlfriend Gwen Stacy, that was her actual father, they was killed, Now, over the course of the next issue, which is the Amazing Spider-Man issue 91 in December of 1970, that's when they have the actual funeral for Captain Stacy, then you have like Gwen Stacy and so on, and then she begins to develop like this extreme hatred for Spider-Man, and she doesn't know that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, so that's kind of odd, being that Peter Parker's her boyfriend, but at the same time he is Spider-Man, so whoa, that's like a big, like tragic thing. Like, imagine she knew that he was Spider-Man, and she really believes that Spider-Man had hands in the death of her father, Captain Stacy, So she actually seeks the help of this guy known as, I think, Sam Bullet, and she actually seeks his help to take on Spider-Man and bring him to justice, Now, at the same time, you have Sam Bullet. He's actually campaigning to be New York's district attorney. So he's actually running a campaign to win that position, But at the same time, he's like corrupting, and kind of like bad underneath, But Gwen Stacy does still seek out his help, to bring in Spider-Man. And she's actually doing his campaign, And at the same time, Bullet, he actually wants J. Jonah Jameson and like Robbie, he wants them to come help too with like the Daily Bugle to help fund his campaign and bring in like Spider-Man in. And if he can actually get Spider-Man to be brought to justice, he can it would actually help his campaign. He would become district attorney of New York. And eventually we also have an X-Man who gets involved in this particular story too as well. The Iceman, he actually shows up, and he's actually on the side of Bullet too as well, And he's actually trying to take out Spider-Man. Stan Lee actually wrote the whole script for those particular like issues, 4 issues. He actually wrote like the storyline for those particular issues. Now, like I guess you could say the true meat or the true masterpiece of the story itself is, of course, the Amazing Spider-Man issues 121 and issues 122, and each contain like the death of Gwen Stacy in the final battle with Green Goblin, you know, the Norman Osborn version of the Green Goblin. Because when I was actually reading like the Spider-Man comic books like back in the early 90s, it was actually Harry who had took on the persona of the Green Goblin. Like his son, he actually was like the Green Goblin during my era when I was reading them, you know. But yeah, of course, now these two issues right here are like very good, you know. Now Stan Lee wasn't actually writing the actual script or story for these. They at this point were written by Gary Conway. At that point, he was actually writing. I think the artist has kind of changed over time, you know, but Gary Conway was actually one who wrote those particular two issues, you know. Now, of course, these two particular issues were supposedly very shocking at the time, and they were released in, I think, I know that Amazing Spider-Man 121 was released, I think, in June of 1973, and then the next one, the Amazing Spider-Man issue 122, was actually released in July of 1973, you know. And like the story at the time was supposed like shocking and one of the greatest stories that were ever created in the world of like comics, you know, like the idea that they killed off major characters, you know, that was really shocking at the time, you know. Now the issue 122 of the Amazing Spider-Man, it does open with like Harry Osborn, you know, he's like sick from like drugs or something like that, like, and he's like laying in bed, you know. And at the same time, Norman, like Osborn, he was like upset and hurt that his son is so sick and so on, you know. So he's actually like doing stuff, and at one point, like, you know, he regains his memory because he had lost the idea, the memory that he knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man. He actually lost those memories, like doing like some kind of amnesia accident where he had lost his memory, you know. But then somehow he regains his memory. He remembers that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, his son's like best friend, you know. So he does remember that and so on, you know. Like married, like, you know, Gwen Stacy and all, he remembers all that, you know. So he goes to Peter Parker's apartment to actually confront him, you know. But it turns out Peter Parker is not there, and he actually sees Gwen Stacy there, and he takes Gwen Stacy and he kidnaps her and takes her off, you know. And I think he takes her to like the George Washington Bridge, and of course Spider-Man learns about this. Well, Peter Parker learns about this when he comes home. He sees like the pumpkin lantern that the Green Goblin usually throws out. He sees one on like Gwen Stacy's bag, like the same bag that he had got for her, you know. So he goes, like, and he finds that the Green Goblin has taken her to a bridge. Then, of course, they have, like, a conversation in the fight, you know. Of course, this is where, like, the death of Gwen Stacy occurs, too. And I do see what they meant by, like, you know, how it can be kind of confusing to a certain extent. Because when Gwen Stacy falls, like, she actually falls from the George Washington Bridge. But when she's falling, you know, she could have already been dead, and even the Green Goblin himself said that the height alone would have killed her, you know, because she had fell from such a great distance, you know. He actually mentions that to Spider-Man, but at the same time, Spider-Man did shoot out like a web, and it caught her, and at the same time, he kind of believes that it had broke her neck, you know, like when he had shot the web at her, you know, and pulled her, he still believes that that's what actually broke her neck, you know, or something like that, you know. But of course, you know, the Green Goblin says that the height could have killed her. And at the same time, she could have already been dead, you know, so there's like a lot of controversy around that particular moment, you know. But it is like, I guess, at the time it was. Now, to me, it's not, you know, because I grew up like in a later era, you know, but at the time that was considered a very shocking death in the world of comics, you know. And of course, we come to the final issue of The Amazing Spider-Man, issue 122, and this was released in July of 1973. Now this, of course, contains like the final battle with Spider-Man and the Green Goblin, you know, the Norman Osborn version of the Green Goblin. And they have their so-called, like, you know, they have their, like, fight, you know. And after their fight, you know, the Green Goblin somehow actually manages to kill his own self, you know, because he tries to use, like, his glider to attack Spider-Man. They actually took these elements of the comic book story and put them, like, in the movies, you know, like with Tobey Maguire and William Dafoe. The Spider-Man movies directed by Sam Raimi, they actually took these elements and put them into that movie, you know, where he actually called his glider, but then Spider-Man dodged at the last minute with like his spider sense, and the glider struck him right like in his chest, and that's what killed him, you know. And of course, we all know, like later on, like many years later, Norman Osborn actually came back. He wasn't supposedly dead. And I do like the way those were played out. They were like very serious and like very realistic, you know. But like the actual tone of Spider-Man in the story, he does still like the humor, like and like funny, like comedic elements. And by the way, like I said, like I think plenty of times before, you know, Spider-Man is actually my second favorite superhero after Batman, and he's actually the one I was really reading mostly in comic books, you know, like when I was reading comic books, it was mostly Spider-Man comic books that I read, you know, but in the end, it turns out that like Batman really became my all-time favorite superhero, but Spider-Man is #2, and actually my #1 favorite Marvel superhero, you know. So that's why I decided to give this a shot, you know. But I was always planning on reading this particular tale, you know, like the Death of Gwen Stacy and so on, you know. So you can actually look for me to read probably like more of these, you know, like more Spider-Man comic books, you know. Because like I said, it still seems like his aren't on the level of like Batman, you know. He doesn't really have anything like similar to like the Dark Knight Returns or like Year One. He doesn't really have those kind of issues, you know. But like Batman, you know, it is like a much older character, you know. So I think that's why they kind of have his like that, you know. They don't really have like those kind of like Spider-Man type stories, you know. They have like a bunch of collected issues, you know. So yeah, you can kind of look forward to part of me reading like a more Spider-Man based like comic books now, like graphic novels. Now I did enjoy this graphic novel, The Amazing Spider-Man, Death of the Stacys. I did enjoy this a lot, you know. And like I said, that's the cover of it, and it has it on the back too. I did enjoy this, you know, but I think like the shock value and everything, you know, it wasn't really too surprising to me because I really knew the tale so well, you know. But actually finally getting a chance to finally read the whole thing, I did enjoy it, you know. It was pretty cool. It had good action in it, the writing was good. I thought the artwork was good, you know. And like I said, like the actual serious tone of it was kind of interesting and fun too as well. But like Spider-Man himself, he did still keep like his humorous like sides, you know, and everything. So I thought that was cool. But in the end of The Amazing Spider-Man, Death of the Stacys, I'm giving this a B. And I would definitely recommend it mainly for the issues of The Amazing Spider-Man, issues 121 and 122. I would definitely recommend it just for those alone. But if you want to see like what happened with Captain Stacy too as well, I would definitely recommend it, you know, for that crowd too as well. So yeah, I'm giving this a B. Please leave a comment and subscribe too as well.